Well, good morning, Strong Tower Church. It's such an honor to be with you, whether you're in person or you're joining us online this morning. We're so excited that you chose to spend the next few moments with us here at Strong Tower Church. My prayer is that no matter where you may find yourself today, is that understand this, that Jesus is near. He is nearby. We can call out to him. Man, we can connect with him. He wants to connect with you today. And so I hope that you come hungry, maybe expecting to hear a word from God. And so maybe you have a notepad and a pen or a tablet. Maybe you're watching on a computer today, or you're taking some notes on your phone. Whatever it is, make sure that as God speaks to you, as he brings some things to your mind and heart, maybe it's through his word, maybe it's through worship. I hope that you just take some notes today and reflect on it in the upcoming days and weeks ahead. Today, we're in week 4 of our series called The Beginner's Guide to Predicting Your Future, and I'm excited to bring this message to you. Before we dive into this message, I want to encourage you, first of all, with what Joe Powell was speaking about when it comes to giving and our tithing, something special that we began doing at the end of last year. And it sort of got interrupted because of COVID, and how it threw a wrench in our schedule and meeting and all that type of thing. But we're still doing a greatest gift offering, and it's going all the way up until February the 28th. February 28th, we'll be celebrating 15 years as a church, which is phenomenal. 15 years at this location, 5 years at our Lafayette location. And so we're super excited about that. But one thing that we're really pumped about is how that since the beginning of our church, we've always done our very absolute best to try to make everyone feel welcome and valuable when they come on the property. We don't care if it's their first time visiting with us or if it's their 100th time being with us. We want to make every person feel valuable and know that we're excited that they showed up to church today. And so one thing we're doing is some renovations at both of our campuses. And the major renovation that we're going to be doing is in our kids ministry area. It's called Kids Strong. One thing we're going to be doing is redecorating the walls. We're going with 3D imaging. It's going to be a real fun, inviting atmosphere and environment. And this is something we've been working with some teams down in Texas to develop this really cool scene. And if you want to know what it looks like, go to strongtowerchurch.com, click on the giving icon. When the giving icon comes up, it goes like weekly giving, but it does the Christmas offering is right below that, or the greatest gift offering right below that. Click on that, and you'll show all the images of what we're looking at having designed at both of our campuses for our children, because we want to make sure that kids have a really good time when they come to church. There's 2 things we really focus on in Kids Strong. Number 1, we'll make sure they have a good time. They have fun. If they have fun, they're going to want to come back, right? If it's boring, if they lose interest in it, I think that church should be one of the funnest places, one of the most greatest opportunities that we could come and be, and I don't want to throw the word out there, but let's just be honest, this is the season we're in as a culture. I don't want to throw the word entertained out, but if you can't captivate someone's attention, right, and excitement and anticipation, we don't think that church should be predictable, do we? Especially in our kids area, especially in our youth nights on Wednesday night. And so this is what we're doing. We'll make sure they have fun. Number 2, they learn about Jesus. When they have fun while they learn about Jesus, they're going to retain it a lot better. And they're going to invite their little buddies and friends to come back with them next week. As a matter of fact, they're going to wear mom and daddy out to come back next week. And so be looking for this in the upcoming months. Our end goal was to hope to have this done by Easter of this year. I don't know if that's going to be available now because of COVID and how it's threw some wrench, in our plans and planning, but we're going to try as hard as we can, okay? So your offering, your gift, the greatest gift offering is it's going to be above and beyond our normal tithes. And I encourage you to be praying about, what to give. And you can begin to give that right now. Or if you want to hold that offering and give it on the 28th of February, that's great too. But be praying about what you're going to give. Here's what I know. Kids Strong made a tremendous difference in my 2 sons. I have a 16-year-old and a 19-year-old, and it's made a tremendous difference. And I'm so thankful that we had that at our church to make an impact in their life that will carry out into their adulthood. And so I know you are as well. So make sure you take the opportunity to go to our website. And you can also, there's an envelope. You can just write the greatest gift on it as well, and it'll go directly to that. Today, as we dive into the sermon, I often forget that when Angie and I, we could be on the couch together. We could be reading something in the bed, whatever it is. we both, I forget, we both have different eyesight. And what I mean by that is whenever I go to, if I'm watching or looking something on my phone, I don't know about you, but how many of you, like when you read, you're like this? It's pretty, anybody like that? Like it's close to your eyes? That's just the way I am, right? When I'm looking, I don't care if I got glasses on or if I don't got glasses. Like, I've got to have something pretty close, man. My wife, I'll say, hey, Angie, look at this. And I'll throw it right in her face about the same distance because that's how I read. And here's what she does automatically. She takes my arm, she pulls it way out here. And I'm like, how can you even see that way out there? Like it's a stretch for me. Her eyes focus a lot different than my eyes do, right? And so I've learned over the years that just as her and I, husband and wife, we see things differently, right? I see things better at a closer distance. For her, she see things better at a further distance. And so it works different for all of us. And I think that as we grow and as we age, those things may change. I went to the eye doctor, I think it was last year, got prescribed some bifocals. So now I'm in that club. That's pretty cool. Pretty awesome. Yeah. If I'm ever out in the wilderness and it's cold, just hold these babies out to the sun and start a fire, That's what happens. I'm okay. I watched Survivor, man. It's all good. But today I want to talk about our focus. I want to talk about, I think, coming out of last year, if there's one thing that I've been trying to be transparent and open with you, is that I felt like I was distracted. Does anybody say that you felt maybe distracted last year? Or maybe you just feel not so much maybe because of the pandemic. It could have been because of the pandemic. But sometimes I think that as men and women, even as teenagers, we can become easily distracted. If you saw the movie Up, how many of you guys see the movie Up, the Disney movie Up? It's a great movie. But I love the dog in that movie, right? When he gets the collar, he's able to talk, and he's having a conversation, the squirrel runs by, right? And he just stops mid-sentence, and he says, squirrel. The dog does, and I think that's me. It's really easy for me. I can be focused and having a conversation with you, right? I want to go all in whatever I'm diving into, studying, preparing for, planning. But if I see something run by, right? Something comes on a notification on my phone, I'm distracted. There's a beep, I'm distracted. There's a notification, I'm distracted. Any of you guys get distracted very easily? I get distracted. And so I'm going to talk about that in today's talk because I think that we all wrestle with it. If you have your Bible, go with me to Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10, verse 38. Luke 10, 38. And I'm going to read through verse 42 today. As Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he taught. But Martha was what? Martha was distracted. Man, you would think, and I would think, that if Jesus Christ is in the house, if he come to your home, he's in your house, that your total attention would be on Jesus. You would hang on to every word that he said. You would be taking notes, right? You'd be taking video. I would. I'm going to capture this moment. The guy who has raised the dead, who's healed the blind, the lame, the handicapped, has been healed of their infirmities, whatever it was. This dude is in your house. But Martha is distracted by the big dinner that she was preparing. And she came to Jesus and she said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I'll do all the work? Tell her to come and help me. But the Lord said to her, my dear Martha, you are worried and upset over these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about, and Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her. For many of us, there's a really good chance you've heard this text before. You've studied this text. You've read it. You've heard others teach or preach on it. But today, I hope that you can see it through a different lens. I hope it speaks to you in a different area, in a different season of your life. For many of us, we've come to believe that Martha has done something like super terrible. And a lot of folks give her a hard way to go. That I can't believe that Jesus is in the house and she's focused on the dinner. She's focused on the preparations. She's focused on the details. But I would say that all of us in the audience, and those of you who are watching online today, I would say that many of us are a lot like Martha. We just can't see it. Sometimes when our focus, and that's what we do, when I have to bring something up close to read, or when my wife Angie has to push things out a little further, it's what we're doing is we're trying to get it in focus so that we can see it. How many of you guys know that many of us, we can't often see what we struggle with the most in our life? Whatever those things might be. Someone said this one time, and I took note. I think it was really good. The sins that we struggle with most look uglier on other people. The sins that we struggle most with, they look uglier on other people. What is that statement saying? That we often notice the sins that others struggle with, but we often gloss over our own. And most of the time, it's the same sin that we point out in others, we ourselves struggle with. We fight through. And so for Martha, I think today, let's just be honest and say, you know what? I get distracted. I get distracted in the details. We get distracted in the details of just living life. The work week, the school week, the planning, the prepping, grocery shopping, buying clothes, paying the bills. All those things are daily routines. But if we're not careful, we will get so drowned in the details that we miss the most important moments to sit and to connect with Jesus daily. I think it's so often for many of us that we just sort of run through life with this hectic schedule. And so I think that a lot of us have a lot in common with Martha, more than we like to admit. And what I sense is that as Jesus comes through the town, we believe that they sensed that Jesus was coming, that they knew that he was going to be their guest. And for Martha, she just gets so buried in the details that she goes from excitement to frustration. She's excited that Jesus is in their house, but now she's frustrated that Mary isn't chipping in and helping with the preparation of the meal, or vacuuming the floor, or putting things away where they go. So she goes from excitement to frustration, but I want you to know what Jesus doesn't do. He doesn't condemn her. And this is what I want to speak to you today. Verse 41, let me just read this again for us. But the Lord said to her, "Dear Martha, you're worried and upset over all these details. There's only one thing that you should be concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her." Jesus says she's found the one thing. And this is going to be the focal point of my sermon today, is that you get to choose that one thing. Every day you and I live, we choose that one thing. What is the most valuable thing to us that we deem is important? We get to choose. For Mary, she knew right there in that moment that, you know what? The supper is going to get done. The house is still going to be here. But this is a one-time moment that I'm not going to take for granted. I'm not going to let it slip through my fingertips. I'm going to soak it up like a sponge. I'm going to enjoy this moment. I'm not going to let it pass by. And I think that so many times we get so bogged down in the details, the planning, the prepping, which is all good. We need to do those things, but we miss out on the person that we was preparing those things for, that we was planning for. Even when you have birthday celebrations, we get so bogged down in the prepping that we miss the moment to actually enjoy it with our family and our friends. You know what I'm talking about? Have you ever been there? You get so worried that the days arrive that you're exhausted to the point that you can't even enjoy the day, and then all you're thinking about is the cleanup that comes later, instead of sitting in that moment and being present with what you prepared for. And this is what Jesus is teaching us. The next thing I want you to notice is not just the one thing, but Jesus says that she's discovered what will not be taken away from her. And this is so vital. If you know anything about Mary and Martha, they have a brother named Lazarus who dies. Jesus goes to the tomb. He says, "Roll the stone away," and he calls a dead man to come out walking, alive. It's their same brother. This is the same family. It's their brother. When life has ups, and we sing about it in worship, and when it has its downs, there's one thing that's constant, and his name is Jesus. And this is what Jesus is telling Martha, who she's frustrated. She's upset. right? She's not focused. She's distracted by the details, and she's missing the very presence of the Son of God who is in her living room speaking life into her. And he said, listen, don't get so bogged in these details. Mary's discovered the one thing that's really and most valuable as she sat at the feet of Jesus. Because listen, all of us, we're going to face ups and downs in life. We're going to face trials. We're going to be on some mountains. We're going to be some valleys. Those things are inconsistent, but there's one thing that's consistent. And it's the one thing that will not be taken from you when you're on the mountain or when you're in the valley. And so, at the time I have left with you, I want to talk about how do we stay focused in a world that can be so distracting. How do you and I stay focused on Jesus? How do we keep him at the center of our life, the center of our marriage, the center of our home? Number one, we must choose it. Really simple. We have to choose it. We have to choose Jesus. It all just starts with a decision, a choice. And so if I ask you as an individual, what would you say is the top 5 things that you value in your life? What is the top 5 things? If you want to see what we value, someone said this years ago, look at someone's calendar and look at their checkbook. Look at their calendar and look at their checkbook, and that will show you what we truly do value. Because what we value, we give our time to. What we value, we give our resources to, right? I can tell you all day long, I value Jesus, but if my calendar and my generosity through my finances do not reflect that, then my heart is not in line with what my mouth is saying. Does that make sense? Jesus said at one time in Scripture, he says, people honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And so we have to choose to keep Jesus at the center of our life. So let me just say this. If you would choose, what is the top 5 things? We would say possibly, maybe, we would say God, right? God has to be the center of it all. God instructed this to Moses when he gave him the 10 Commandments, right? You must worship the Lord your God. How do we worship him? Heart, soul, right? We go all in. What would be the second thing? For those of you who are married, you would say your spouse. For those of you who are married with children, you would say your family, right? Now, beyond that, it's up to you what you do. You know, you can say, you know what, I want to value my future, so I'm gonna be smart with my resources, right? I want to be wise. I want to plan for the future. Some might say top 5, is my health. I want to take care of myself. I want to make sure my family takes care of themselves. We want to be in this thing for the long haul, and so that's a value that we want to have. It could be work. I want to make sure that I do what I need to do, keep that healthy so that I can move up in the corporation over the years and retire someday with a good pension. And so I don't know what those top 5 things could be. For me and my family, it would be this. It would be God, my wife, my children, then church. 4th would be easy church. One of our core values is that we believe you can't do life alone. And so I need the church family. And then you pick your number 5. But here's what I would say this. When you pick your 5, when you choose your 5, you say, these are the most valuable things in my life. These are non-negotiables. Non-negotiables. When you decide that, you have to understand that urgency will always take precedent over what we deem or value as important. The things that are urgent will sometimes be a distraction for you to cut corners on what you said and I said we value the most. And what happens, what we value the most gets put on the back burner, often gets neglected, left out, overlooked until the wheels come off, and then we look around and go, what happened? But what happened is we moved what we said top 2, top 3, top 4 values, and we moved them down here about 10 or 12, and we replaced them with whatever was urgent in that season of our life. What happened? We got distracted. What happened? We became unfocused. Jesus knew that. He knew that we would face that. We would struggle with that. And so what we don't know in the story is whether Martha, how many of you ladies, and ladies, you're really good at this, a lot better probably than us men. How many of you ladies are planners? How many of you ladies are planners? You like to plan. You like to write down details. You like to write down. My wife is very detailed. She always has been. Me, I'm not so much about the details. I'm much about big picture. But she's very detailed. She writes notes. She has everything planned out. She's very organized. And I don't know if Martha was that type of sister that maybe she said, hey, I'm going to clean this part of the house. I'm going to do this part of the meal. And then maybe she wrote Mary a list. Mary, you do this part of the house. You clean this room and you do that chore and you do that function, right? And so maybe, just maybe Mary got her part of the list done. Maybe she's really good. She's really fast. Maybe she did that. And then she needed some help Martha did on her end of the task. Or maybe Martha, she got halfway through the task. Jesus came in and she said, I'm done. Hey, I'm going to enjoy this moment. Jesus is here. We don't have anything else to prep for. The man is here. I'm going to enjoy this moment. So when it comes to choosing, it's all about you and I. It's about us. We get to choose. The definition of choose is this: to select freely, after consideration, to prefer or to decide. When it comes to choosing, it's all about you and me. We get to choose what we value the most. We get to choose what are we giving our heart, our attention, our affection to, our devotion, our commitment. What are we choosing? Choose wisely. I hope that we all would choose what Mary chose that day, because Mary made Jesus a priority in that moment. And for many of us, we have to learn how to prioritize things in our life. And it begins, I think, in the very beginning of the day. Many of us, we get up in the morning, and as soon as our feet hit the ground, we run out the door. We bypass Jesus in the living room. We bypass him and we go right to the vehicle. We jump in it and we get our day started, right? Why? Because we were in a hurry. Why? Because we have obligations. Why? Because we have routine. Why? Because we stayed up too late watching Netflix. Why? Because we stayed up surfing the internet too much to buy something off eBay. I mean, it can be on and on. You know, we whatever it is that we choose. We say we choose that Jesus is important to us, and yet, when was the last time that you had a meaningful talk with him? When was the last time that I sincerely sat at his feet like Mary? It's all about choose, right? It's all about choices. And so, it's great to plan and prepare like Martha did, but it seems, again, that she was putting more emphasis on the preparations and not the person. And when it comes to church, when it comes to ministry, I want to read this to you because I wrote this down this week in my office because it's so important. In church or ministry, it's easy to get focused on the what of what we're doing, rather than the who that we're doing it for. It's very easy. So if you're super involved in ministry, please write that down. I'm going to come back to that in our leadership talk on the 31st. But it's so imperative that we don't get lost in that we have to fight to focus to keep Jesus at the center. We have to fight to keep Jesus at the center of our life. Craig Rochelle said this this past week in our leadership podcast, or maybe 2 weeks ago, and I jotted this down because it's so important. I thought, man, this would be so great to speak about this Mary and Martha sermon. He says this, that one of the biggest distractions to most people is sitting in their hands right now. It's our phones. It is one of our biggest distractions. According to Business Insider, the average person touches their phone over 2,600 times a day. 2,600 times a day. That's nuts, isn't it? I mean, I think we would say, there's no way I touch my phone. But if we have one of those baseball pitch things, little clickers, every time that we touched our phone, if we just click that, I think by the end of the day, we might be surprised what that number may tally up to be. The findings said that the worst offenders can touch their phone more than 5,400 times in 24 hours. Yeah. Somebody say, put a shock collar on those folks, right? We're going to touch that phone, man. We get a shock. Yeah, it's just crazy. But how many guys know? I think it's just this addiction that we have. It's an addiction that we have that we just turn from the bed. We grab the phone. It's funny that I've got an iPhone and I have this little thing put on it that just like you guys do, and it's funny that on the front of it, it learns us to where it says, David, you open this app often when you get up or when you begin your day. I'm like, dang, this thing knows me that well. Like it knows I open up that particular app above all the other apps on my phone. And so a lot of us, let me get back to a lot of us feel scattered, overwhelmed, and unproductive. That's how we would describe our life right now. We'd say, man, I feel overwhelmed. I feel like my thoughts are scattered. I feel like things are just chaotic. I don't feel productive. And it's common to think when we feel that, it's common to think, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time in the day. But for many of us, the problem isn't a lack of time. The problem is a lack of focus. It's where we focus our time. It's where we focus our energy. A lot of our focus is given to things that distract us. How do we refocus on what matters the most? How do we refocus on what matters the most? And I would say this, distractions come in all shapes and sizes. For you and for me, they just do. And we have to allow Jesus to open our eyes, just like that Martha moment. To say, look, Martha, it's not about the details. It's great that you plan and prepare this. I'm honored. Jesus is honored by that. But Jesus says the most important thing right now is to be in my presence without your mind and heart being distracted. And when we come to church on Sunday, whether you're in person or you're watching online, so many times we come in and Jesus wants to connect with us. Jesus just wants you to sit at his feet and allow him to love you, encourage you, bring some things to light in your life, just to have that real one-on-one moment with him. But our heart and our mind is so distracted that we miss out on what he and how he wants to connect with us, how he wants to heal us, how he wants to guide us, how he wants to speak into our marriage, speak into our parenting, speak into our finances, speak into our future, speak into our planning. But we're lost in the details of the moment. How do we refocus on what matters the most? Craig Rochelle says it this way. He says the best way to increase your focus is to decrease your distractions. The best way to increase your focus is to decrease your distractions. So maybe a good next step today is that when you leave here is that you have to go home and look at what are some things, they're not necessarily bad things, but they're things that are distracting you from achieving what you have said that you want to begin to plan out and live out for the next 5 years in your life. Whether you're single, married, young parents, empty nesters, wherever you might be, there's some things that are distracting you from day to day decision making that will affect your 5 years from now. And so again, you get to choose what that looks like. We have to focus and direct our attention. It's how we get results. Number 2, after you choose it, you've got to do it. Super simple. You got to do it. The issue isn't that a lot of us have good intentions to do certain things. The issue is that we have a lot of good intentions. But how do you know that good intentions isn't enough? Right? I've got good intentions to join a gym. So we buy membership. But how many of you guys know that just buying a membership isn't enough? It's not just about choosing it, but it's about doing it. Now we have to go and actually open the door of the gym and go and get on the treadmill, right? That's doing it. How many of you grew up with hearing the old phrase, it's the thought that counts? You ever heard that? It's the thought that counts. Yeah, you tell your wife that on your anniversary, right? Yeah. I intended on buying you an anniversary card, right? I intended on buying you roses, right? Do you think she's going to look at you and go, oh, it's okay, baby, you come home empty-handed? It's the thought that counts, right? No. It's the action that counts, right? It's the action. It's us doing something. A good intention is just an intention. But until we get intentional about an intention, then it just stays an intention. And nothing happens. Nothing happens in your marriage. Nothing happens in your finances. Nothing happens in your ministry. Nothing happens in your parenting. Nothing. We have to put action. We got to put legs. We got to put hands to the intention. So let me give you some things. I want you to think about this. I'm gonna read these. I'm gonna talk about these, and I want you to think about your life. Unless we do something with an intention, it's just a good thought. Nothing more, nothing less. Let me show you this. Intention versus destination. When you put action to a good intention, you will get to where your journey is trying to take you. Let me give you an example. Let's say some of you say, I want to save money. I want to save money for my future. I want to put back for a nest egg, right? I want to save some money, but right now I have too much debt to put anything away. Okay, let's look at this. It's a good thought to want to save money, to put some back, but here's the issue. You've got to look at your budget and where are you spending money that you can cut right now to begin to put money back. I'll give you some really quick ways right now. Let's say you want to put $15 back a month. You say, well, I can't afford to do that. Cancel Spotify. Cancel Netflix. Well, I don't know. I got to have my Netflix. How many of you guys know there's streaming services out there that is free? Right? Cancel Apple Music. Go to Starbucks less a week. Stop eating out so much during the month. I mean, there's ways that if we look at our budget, and some of you are like, dude, you're opening my eyes right now because I don't even have a budget. Get a budget. Where are you spending your money? Where is it going? Someone said if you don't control your money will control you. And so you've got to figure out where is the excess fat where you're spending money that you can cut and begin to put back in your nest egg. We could say going to the theater, which has really changed since COVID. But, you know, there's some things that if you and I really look at our finances, we can make some cuts today that will heavily impact our future tomorrow financially. Would you all agree? But you may say, well, I've got good intentions of putting money back one day. That one day will never come, folks. It's just a thought unless you take action today. Someone may say this, when I'm ready to get married, I'll choose a responsible partner. But right now, I'm just about having some fun. Listen, man. Listen, if you're dating, when I began to date Angie, I didn't date for the short term. I dated for the long term. It was never, well, I'm going to date her until something better comes along. That was never my thought, right? My thought was, when I was looking for a girlfriend, there was things I was looking at, even as a young man, I was looking, someone who had my values, right? My type of morals, convictions, church background, sold out to Jesus. I mean, there was certain things that I was looking at. And then there's, you know, what type of fun and laughter and what did chemistry look like when we did life together. I mean, there was those things, right? So when I began to date, and when I began to date, shoot, we dated for 3.5, 4 years before we ever got married, engaged, right? You think I'm starting over again after that? I said, heck no to that. I'm like, listen, I know when I began dating Angie, I knew what we had together. And I knew our gifts. We dated long enough. We knew the ins and the outs. Her weaknesses is my strengths, and her strengths is my weaknesses. When I began dating, I was dating for the one that God would guide me to. And so listen, if the person you're dating now, if they're not the one, you need to be looking at your life and say, you know what, I'm not just doing this for short term. This is long term. I'm looking for commitment, right? Now, I'm not saying you go home and force the I do question on anybody. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that some folks will jump from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship. Right? And they think one day I'm going to settle down when I find the right one. That's a good intention. Would you all agree with that? But that same scenario goes on and now someone's in their 40s. And they're still going through that same progression. Someone might say this, I want to raise my kids in church. I want to raise my kids in church. We're just so busy right now in the seasons of game and practices and life. I hear this a lot. Parents, you decide. I was speaking with someone this week in my office that you know, when I grew up in it's years ago, a couple of decades ago, things look a lot different than they do now. I grew up playing sports. When Angie and I, as we raised our sons through Pee Wee, age, and in junior high, in high school, things looked a little bit similar to when I grew up. A little. Things began to shift there toward the end of Dawson's high school season. Things began to shift, but there's two things that never happened when I grew up in Westmoreland. Number one, you never practiced on Sunday, and you never practiced on Wednesday night. We just never did. When I grew up, we didn't do those things. Folks who maybe didn't even go to church, who were coaches, honored that, and they let us out to go to church. As Dawson began to come through high school, things began to shift, and I saw that. Really, even middle school, the coaches began to want to practice on Sundays. I'm like, dude, you've lost about every game this season. I don't think practicing on Sunday is really going to help much. I'm just honest, right? And so, for us as parents, here's what we got to decide. Good intention, focus. What they see us do, they often replicate. If church is a priority for us as adults, as moms and dads, when your sons and daughters grow up and get their own family, they're going to continue that trend because you took them to church all their life. You set the tone. You set the example. You didn't get distracted. You stay focused. And a really good chance that when your sons and daughters begin to have their families, they're going to raise and rear them up in God's house as well. This is something we have to fight. Because your season, listen, these seasons, I'm telling you, they're not slowing down, parents. Listen to me. I love sports as much as anybody else in this house. I'm going to watch the AFC and NFC championship today. But you know what? My son, my oldest son, he played basketball all through Pee Wee, middle school, high school. He didn't play in a college. He didn't go to the NBA. As a matter of fact, he loved basketball as much as anybody, but looked at me and he said, Daddy, I'm ready to move on to my next stage in life. You know what prepares them for that? What they learn back here in Kids Strong. You know what prepares them for that? What Sean Carter's teaching them in here on Wednesday night about Jesus. And they're having fun while they learn about it. Yeah, we learn good things in sporting. Don't get me wrong. We learn good things. We learn discipline. We learn commitment. All those things are great. But here's what I'm saying. We have to choose what priority those things will play in our homes. Because we can wish all day, I'm going to begin it one day. But that day will never come if we don't put action into place. Another one is this. I want to be around to raise my family and to see my grandkids. But right now, I just want to eat and drink whatever I want. You say, what are you saying, Pastor? Well, here's what I'm saying. Pay attention to our diet. Pay attention to our exercise. Take some walks, right? Drink less Mountain Dew. Ooh, that's hard for me, right? But it's something I know that I have to do if I want to be in this thing the long game, right? And I'm not a fan. Listen, I'm not a big fan of exercise, man, but I know that I need it, right? And so I'm trying to put those disciplines in place. I'm trying to put the disciplines in place to eat less sugars and a little more salads. Not so much ranch dressing on it, but it's really good, a lot of ranch dressing. But so try to work those things in, okay? Because, listen, we want all of you around for as many years as we can have you, okay? Would you all agree with that? We want to all be around as long as we can to enjoy our families and to be that light and example of love in their life. Someone says this, I want to be a great parent or a great spouse. I just need to get my career on the right track first. Listen, you don't have to wait for that. Start being a great parent and a great spouse right now. Okay? Those are the things, they'll work themselves out. But that husband, that wife you're going home to every day, those little boys and girls that are your sons and daughters, God has placed them in your home and your care today. Love those people in your house the fullest today with what you have at this moment. Someone said this, once I get more money, I'll be more generous. No, you won't. And I won't either. The more money you make, it's been proven, the more money we spend. If we're not generous now, we won't be generous then. So how do we break this? Well, start being generous now. Just start now. And then another thing is this, attention versus destination. If anything bad ever happens to me, I'll get serious then about my faith. If I'm on my deathbed, then I'll get serious about where I am with Jesus. Don't wait until then. we may not get that moment, right? If Jesus is calling for your heart today, if he's saying, hey, listen, today's the day of salvation. I want to know you. I want to forgive you of your sins. Then by all means, receive his grace and mercy today. Don't put it off till next week or next season or next summer. Enjoy that moment right now. For Mary, intention versus destination, she sat at Jesus' feet and soaked up every word as he taught. She wasn't going to miss this moment. She was super focused on the right now. There's nothing right now more important than me hearing from Jesus Christ. Sadly, that wasn't always everyone's approach to Jesus. Not everyone looked at him that way. As a matter of fact, in Mark 3:1-2, Jesus went to a synagogue again and noticed a man with a deformed hand. And since it was the Sabbath, Jesus' enemies watched him very closely. Jesus went into the synagogue. He went into what we do right now, the church. And as he went in, there were people who were just looking to catch him at something that they could condemn him to death for. They could call him on the carpet, take him to trial. And there was a man with a deformed hand. And what does Jesus do? He sees a man who is in need of a miracle. Now, he wasn't supposed to do any work on the Sabbath. It was the Jewish law, something they added in there. But look at what Jesus did. He healed the man's hand, and they planned to accuse him of working on the Sabbath. It's crazy, isn't it? You think that everybody in that room who just experienced that miraculous moment of a guy who had a deformed hand, maybe since birth, was just completely healed. You think everybody would be losing their mind like we do when someone's baptized, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that we got to experience that. And more importantly, this man is made whole now. He is healed. He is new. He's going to be a functioning life in a whole new way. You think everybody would have this celebratory mindset, but not these guys. They saw the miracle. They saw Jesus, but their heart was blind to him. They were distracted. What was they distracted by? Their hatred of him, their envy of him. They could not see him because their heart and their eyes were blinded. If we're not careful, we can be so blinded that we will miss Jesus in the room. And this is what Jesus was telling Martha. Martha, don't get so caught up in these details, because I think, did somebody say one time that the devil's in the details? Have you ever heard that statement? That we can miss Jesus. And this is what's so dangerous for us. We get distracted by a lot of good things. They're not necessarily sinful things, but they're not the best things. And you have to choose those top 5 things, what they look like for you. You've got to put not just intention, you got to put action, pen to paper, write those things out. Proximity to Jesus doesn't mean a close relationship to him. Close proximity, just because these men were in the room with him, didn't mean they had a close relationship to him. Their heart was hardened. And they missed him. They see him, but they don't want to know him. It's a scary place to be near Jesus and yet not know him. May it not be so with Strong Tower Church. May we choose to be like Mary, who hangs on every word that Jesus says. To allow his word to change our hearts, to change our direction, to change our life. May we not let distractions rob us of the destination to where Jesus wants to take us. And the last text I want to share with you is found in Acts 4, verse 13. The members of the council were amazed. They saw the boldness of Peter and John, for they could see that they were ordinary men. This is key. Peter and John was preaching Jesus. They was preaching the good news of the gospel, and they were threatened. They were beaten. They were arrested because they were doing what Jesus had called them to do. And they weren't going to allow anything to interrupt that. They were focused. They were laser focused on sharing what they saw, what they got to live out with Jesus in those 3 years of ministry. They got to say and to teach and preach from a place of seeing a dead Savior becoming resurrected and being with them in the same room, being allowed to touch him, being allowed to see him. They spoke from a place of not just faith, but by sight also. It says that they saw that they were ordinary men with no special training. They also recognized them as men who had been with Jesus. It's amazing that Peter and John, that they chose the very same thing that Mary did. As you stand to your feet today, they chose the very same thing that Mary did. They focused on one thing that would not be taken from them. You see, what Peter and John discovered, that there's more to life than what meets the eye. It's about mission. It's about commitment. It's the greatest commitment we've ever made is when Jesus Christ saved your soul. It was on that day that you laid your life down and you took up the cross. Christ said, if you want to be my followers, you got to deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me daily. Daily commitment, daily sacrifice, daily focus. We got to fight the distractions that the enemy wants to shoot at our life like arrows. Instead, no, I'm going to stay committed. I'm going to stay focused. Why? Because we are choosing the one thing that remains, the one thing that will not be taken from us, no matter in the highs or in the lows, no matter in the hurt or the joy. There's one thing that remains constant, and his name is Jesus. And he has to stay the center of our life, the center of our marriage, the center of our family, the center of our parenting, because there's a lot of things that's coming after it, that's fighting for your commitment. It's fighting for your generosity. It's fighting for your affection. It's fighting for your calendar. You have to choose. And then you've got to do it. It's that simple. Today, I'm gonna ask you this. I'm just gonna ask you to bow your head with me. Maybe you're here today and you're like, Pastor, my life has just become off the rail. Last year was so filled with uncertainty and things I've never faced and dealt with before as someone single or married or maybe as a family. And maybe you're just going through some things right now. Maybe you're needing direction. You lack focus. You lack commitment. You want to. You've got good intentions, right? But there's things that's just unfocused right now, and you need clarity. You need Jesus to come and to give you guidance, to help guide your heart and to guide your mind. Would you just raise your hand right now and say, Pastor, that's me. Man, I'm there. I'm going through some things. Man, I'm going through some things that I need guidance. I feel like I'm in a spiritual rut. I feel like I'm stuck. Anybody just want to raise your hand and say, that's me, Pastor. I'm going through some things. Maybe you're here today and you're lost and you don't know Jesus as your Savior. I want to give you the opportunity in just a few moments to receive Jesus as your Savior. Maybe you're like that thing I read a while ago. You thought, when I get in my 40s, when I get in my 30s, when I get in my 60s, hey, I'll settle down. I'll take this thing a little bit more serious. You know, I'm coming more to the, maybe to the end of my life. Then I'll give Jesus an opportunity. But maybe today is the day where you ask Jesus to be the Savior of your life. Maybe it's the day that you need to rededicate your life. Maybe those distractions has caused you to limp back into your old path, old lifestyle, old addictions, old struggles. Maybe today you want to confess those to Jesus and say, Jesus, I repent. I want to ask you to open up your eyes and raise your head. Today we're going to sing this last song together, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to have a chance to respond.